Hi, everyone, and welcome to Book Club with Bay. I am Bay, and this is Bay. Say hi, Bay.
Hi, Bay.
And today we're talking about Fall of Night, the 14th book. So we've got one left after this?
One left.
Yeah. In the Morganville Vampire series. Feels like we've been doing this forever.
We haven't been consistently doing them regularly, so it has been quite a while. But also, it's 14 books. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's long. It's long. I think this is one of the longest series we've done, because Mercy plus Alpha and Omega is long, but not all the books were out the first time, when we started doing it. Or not all the books that are currently out were out when we started doing it. Because that was one of the first series we ever did. And then House of Night was longer. And that took a while.
Yeah. It did.
But other than that, we have not tackled a series this long.
No, we haven't, have we? It's a long one. It's a long one. It's 15 books.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know that
I
don't know that I want to tackle another. I don't know that I want to tackle another series this big again, because it's I'm getting series fatigue. It's a lot of books. Because I don't know about you, but one thing that I do notice doing stuff this long, even Mercy at this point, is just the decay as we keep going. I don't know if that's something that, and also it might also be just, I don't know if it's fatigue or noticing genuine drop in quality, but even with Mercy, you know how when there's, it's kind of like when there's a long running TV show and you're like, this should have ended 2 seasons ago. And you're watching it and you feel like whatever the character arc could possibly be, we've done that, it's over. And and you sort of feel like we're just being dragged along with cinder blocks or whatever. Yeah, because
rest assured, next book is we're on the home stretch. We have one book left.
Yeah, and it's yeah, and
I will recommend that you do at some point maybe give yourself a break. I don't know. I will recommend that you do listen to the short stories.
Oh, the Morganville short stories.
Yeah, because some of it's actually kind of fun and interesting. We get to see how Emily and Sam, how they were. She turned him into a vampire when he looked almost the same age as Michael, but they're in love. But he has a kid, etc. Because I don't know about you, but before I read that, I was kind of just like, how did this work?
Yeah,
because it's always been Sam and Michael looked about the same age, but he clearly had a kid, and I don't know when this occurred.
Right.
I'm pretty sure we get the night that Alyssa dies.
Okay.
We get some Eve stories. We get some Mernon stories. I think we get his origin story, when he gets turned into a vampire. I'm pretty sure that's in there. So there's a few different things that, some are kind of fun. Some of the short stories are better than others. Let's be honest. But yeah, it could be just it's more interesting than anything. And I think it would be too difficult to do a book club out of that because it's 9 or 10 different short stories. So it'd be a bit tough to, do. But just for some lazy listening, a couple of them are really boring. I will say a couple of them are really, really, really boring.
So,
but some of them are interesting.
Another thing I have noticed as well is that, like, I'm trying to figure out how to like describe it. I guess it's like character decay, maybe. As we get further into series, I don't know if that's like the right way to describe it, but it's like as you get like further along, it feels like some of the characters start to get less complex.
Yep.
And like more whittled down to their basic parts, or like their most distinct traits. So like in Mercy, for example, I think it's more prevalent with like Stefan, maybe, where like Stefan has gotten like almost like reduced to like broody vampire, and like that's it. Like we've even lost like the fun Scooby-Doo part of him.
And like I get it, he was traumatized. He's got PTSD and all that crap. I don't care. I want Scooby back. Like, can he just? I know that the people within his care were brutally tortured. I understand, and a lot of them died. I get it.
But it feels like we've lost a lot of complexity that we had to his character.
Yeah,
and then. Like, because we're talking about Morganville. In Morganville, like with Shane. Although, like, it's hard with Morganville to describe it because I love these books. Let me preface this by saying I love these books. The characters were never really that complex.
But nothing really about the series was complex.
But at the same time, like, okay, so in this book we go to MIT, which is like, Claire's like dream, whatever. But for like a lot of the last like 6 books almost, we have sort of lost like Claire's like nerdy path. Like, not her nerdiness has been more geared towards vampires than just the more generic curiosity than that being stacked on top of the more generic curiosity she had. So we've lost that part. Shane is much more of like a dude bro than he used to be. Or he's like been reduced to broody dude bro.
Honestly as well, like, I mean, I forgot about this, like, in this book, like, because this book, at least we've only got the 2 perspectives, this book, right?
Yeah.
It's Claire and Shane. But, like, when he's like, I got a job as a dishwasher working for chef. Yes, chef. Blah, 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 blah. The hierarchy of the kitchen is chef. Yes, chef. And I'm, like, thinking, we all know that you say yes, chef, every time the chef tells you to do something. But every time he says the word chef, I was like, chef, yes, chef. Like, did you notice that?
I did. And also, like, here's the thing. Because he got a job as a dishwasher, it felt awkward because that, like, that's the thing that the people do. But you associate that more with, like, the cooks, like the line cooks, than you do with just the guy that does the dishes.
/ busboy, because he's out busting tables.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a little awkward, but Yeah, like,
You know,
it's not that the books aren't enjoyable. It's just that.
I mean, I will say though, there was some prime dated pop culture references that I loved because they're two of my favorite things when referencing this: Firefly and Dr. Horrible sing-along blog.
Yeah, and
Have you
and
seen either?
so no, I haven't.
Serious
But
question.
no, I have not. But one thing that I will say about, because we've talked about pop culture references before, one thing that is good about these kinds of pop culture references is that in this context, it dates the books. That's not a bad thing.
But also though, those two that I mentioned, they still have a pretty strong fan base.
Yeah.
It dates them, but also it could still work.
But again,
It could still.
Dating your book is still not a bad thing.
I mean, and like these books, they're so noughties era.
Yeah,
So
no, like it's just the vibe. Like the vibe alone dates the book in the first place. So the pop culture references are just sort of like icing on the cake. And again, the pop culture references are more or less internally consistent because this book came out in 2013, but the references and the vibe is still very 2006, which makes it work. So as we said before, like when we were going over House of Night, you can totally put pop culture references in your book. You can totally date your book, especially if that's the intent. So if you're using a particular type of phone, like the first iPhone or like flip phones or like whatever, as long as things are internally consistent, dating your book's not a bad thing. It gives more context to, especially like in urban fantasy, it gives more context to like what technology the characters are contending with and stuff like that.
Actually, I will say as well, one thing I did notice in this book, and I don't think it's happened in previous ones, they've started to use their phones in a more, like in this one, they were looking up addresses, like using maps and looking up phone numbers and stuff on their phone. I don't think they've done that in previous books. It's still fine. It doesn't make it inconsistent because even if it's, when did the first book come out?
Like, I think 2006. So it's been inside the book. It's been like 2 years.
Which makes sense. I think the iPhone came out in 2008. I think.
July 29th, 2007. So it does make sense that by this point they would be able to do stuff like that. So the tech is internally consistent, whereas like in House of Night, they go from flip phones to hella smartphones in like 2 months, and you're like, what the fuck? They go from Project Runway to like, we watched a whole season of Game of Thrones, and it's like you're like, last week it was 2005, and like that's where
and then it got even
your book
worse.
Is a problem.
And then it got even way like it's bad enough in the original series, but once you brought in Otherworld, which was set, like what I think we worked out about 9 or 10 months after the last book.
Yeah.
Of the original series.
Mm-hmm.
But it was written like 6 years later or something. But they jumped like that. In the span of a year, they've experienced 10 years in the span of a year.
Yeah, like. And that's the thing, like the beginning of the book starts, at X, and then about a year and a half later, we're at Otherworld, and we have jumped 10 years in technology, which is not internally consistent. Like when Marked was released, we were at the height of emo culture. And then when the first Otherworld book was released, it was like a couple years ago. And all of like the pop culture aura and all of that had evolved to that point. And it's like, it's been a year. Oh my God. Like it was ridiculous. And it felt weird.
Yeah. Like Mercy, right? Like Mercy could work 10 years ago, it could work now.
Well, actually, so if you pay attention, because at one point I was rereading it while we were bitching about this. So Moon Called came out. Also in 2006, the very beginning of 2006. And so it's been now like 4 years. And so if you actually pay attention, the technology in Mercy also evolves at the rate that it should.
Yep.
So,
I mean, and like we also do get to have some, well, I guess there's the ability to accelerate it to an extent if need be as well. One, because I know that apparently in House of Night, like, you know, the world's different because vampires are a thing, and yet every single major historical thing still occurred the exact same way, and all the historical figures are exactly the same. Everything's happened exactly how it happened. Whereas in Mercy, like it's an alternate timeline, effectively.
yeah.
So there is room for inconsistencies, but then also Adam is uber rich with like government contracts and shit like that. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for him to have access to advanced tech.
Well, they
should
like
such a thing occur.
I mean, if you, like I said, if you pay attention, they, especially once Mercy is in a relationship with him, they have access to the latest technology, but nothing that wasn't available. So like when we get to a book that's like a year and a half after the first book is set, because the first book is set in November, and we can assume that's either November of 2005 or 2006, whichever. So when we get to like a year and a half-ish later, it's like Adam has a smartphone, which we can assume is probably like some kind of fancy BlackBerry or iPhones, which were popular back then. Also, we start to get Bluetooth, and Bluetooth was like all the rage, like more the rage than it is now, except like in cars. So I don't know if you remember this, but you'd have people like with Bluetooth head. It was a whole thing. And
I remember that you used to like send like Bluetooth, like it was a thing where you'd like Bluetooth bomb people out in public because you could just like make something just randomly pop up on their phone.
Yeah, you could. And so Bluetooth was used differently then than it is now. But like, anyway, so if you pay attention to it, which like one time I read it, like I said, I did, and nothing's internally inconsistent. I think at one point,
I mean, I think
something moved a little fast with one of the phones, but it wasn't like, but then if you look, like, then I looked it up and I was like, oh, the iPhone was released earlier than I thought it was. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that she does well is she doesn't draw too much, like she doesn't go into specifics, you know. Adam pulls out his fancy smartphone. And that's about the description we get.
Yeah, you do get the impression just from how Mercy talks about it that the fancy smartphone feels very, very fancy, which it would, considering they would be brand new.
Yeah. Whereas in House of Night, it's like I pulled out my iPhone 7S, you know.
Right, but 2 books ago, you had a sidekick. And in the first book, she had like a razor. And it's like, that was a month ago.
Yeah, like it's... Oh, I remember the razors. The razors were... Everyone wanted a razor, and yet most people had a Nokia. And I will say, though, I never had a razor, and in hindsight, I don't regret it, because a Nokia is far more trusty than a razor.
I wanted one so bad. I felt like my parents had betrayed me, because my first phone was not it was a flip phone, but it was not a razor, and I was so upset.
I miss the satisfaction of having a flip phone.
It was pink, though.
But do you remember that satisfaction you get of like just being like, flip?
Yes.
You know, like just,
Yeah.
or if you're really angry, just being like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't satisfactorily angry hang up one of these phones. You can't. The best you can do is hope for the best and peg it at your bed or something. Like,
do you remember when text messages were not threaded?
Oh yes.
So you had to like either remember what somebody had just said to you, or you had to just like look back and be like, huh?
And you only had storage space to store like 30 messages.
Yeah. Whereas now, like, I have messages from Addie from like 3 years ago, and from you too, like just from like forever ago.
And then there was also like the period where I was like, well, not the period. Well, yeah, same period. It was, but you only had like, you had a character limit. I can't remember how, 150.
Oh yeah, you did. It was like tweeting.
Yeah, effectively,
right. Like I forgot about that.
And so then if you wanted to like do a long rant, right, like, but you needed to let them know that more was incoming, so you'd like, you know, delete the last word because you ran out of characters, and you'd have to be like 1/? Because you didn't know how many it would take.
And then like,
it was so exciting when they finally. What?
And then like they might, but they might real quick though. They might send out of order as well.
Yeah.
So then you were like having to piece together like you were a detective. You were like, okay, which is why you numbered them so that if they came in, you know, like 2, 3, 4, 9, 8, like you had to be like, all right, and then like scroll through and be like, fuck. And like one would always come in last.
I still remember the utter joy of when it let you, like, I mean, you still got charged for say like 3 text messages, but you could send all 3 as the one.
Yes.
As the one. That was so exciting.
It would still come in as 3, but you
could send it.
But it would like auto send it as.
And it would, and my ones, at least like on my phone, it would tell you. It would tell you which one was first and which one was second and which one was third. And it would tell you.
Yeah.
Like the phone did it for you. I was just like, this is magic.
And then when they started threading them, we were like, oh, I can just see the conversation.
It like kids,
also this is why people
never understand.
This is one of the reasons too why people used instant messengers, because instant messengers have always been like threaded and stuff like that. Like they were always just easier to use. So if you wanted to have like a long typing conversation, it was so much easier because you could, first of all, you could type. Secondly, you could see what you were doing.
You didn't have to press like number 7, like, whoa, what, like 3 times to get a T, or 4 times to get to T. I can't remember which number letter on it is. Okay, I don't know. I haven't had to worry about that in years, and it's a delight. Yeah, but also the other reason why we used to use instant messages so much as well is because you weren't having to pay for every text message. Because back in those days as well, I don't know about in the US, but here, it was 25 cents a message.
Yeah, because if you were someone who had unlimited texting, and like your friend didn't, it didn't matter. But like that wasn't
a thing we had until after iPhones and everything's.
Yeah, no, it wasn't popular until a while, and now it's just like there's not even a thing that tells you about unlimited texting because like, and like, and another thing is, you know, you would say to somebody like, "Do not text me anymore," like, stop texting me, like, let's move this to like Facebook or like AIM or AOL, whatever, like
MSN Messenger.
Yeah,
I miss MSN Messenger. Like, I mean. I was so heartbroken when I found out that was ending. I hadn't used it in like a decade, but I was very upset.
Yeah. Anyway, we should talk about the book. So
yes, the book. Well, Claire's gone to MIT. This book.
Yes.
Because why not? I also really do like the subtle thing of like, I'm going to be rooming with my old BFF Liz, because she too lives in Cambridge. Because while she doesn't go to MIT, she goes to another school in Cambridge. Wink.
It was so weird though, because we were like, who? For the first time
She was mentioned in book 1.
Oh, good. Thanks. Okay, real quick. Writing advice from Book Club with Bay. Just real quick. Best friends speak to each other.
Well, in Claire's defense, like, she even admits in this one, she's like, I've barely spoken to Liz in years. Like, more or less, she kind of stopped talking to her soon after moving to Morganville.
She does say that, but she never has any feelings about that, which she should have thoughts about that, but she doesn't. Now, I do appreciate that the name is the same and everything. I appreciate that. I appreciate that deep. That's very nice. But you know, like, leaving a best friend behind and then going through all the thing, like, if I were to do that, something I would have done, for example, is, at least in the first book or the second book, you know, maybe like those feelings dwindle after a couple books or something, is like maybe something Eve does reminds her of her best friend, or wow, I wish I could talk to my best friend about this because we're so close. Like, you know, whatever, like you would have, at least for the first couple books, some kind of like, internal,
you know, lamenting the thought a bit more often, because I think we do get an initial thing, like, you know, I think when she first moves into the glass house, like, she mentions like emailing her or something, but she's like, I don't know what to say because things are going a bit weird. I think that happened. I could just be.
Let me see.
Imagining that.
Do I have glass houses on here?
If not, I do.
I have black dawn. I do not. I don't. Can you search for it? Because now I'm curious. Yes. Sorry, it's just one of those things. Also, I don't want to unfairly criticize glass houses, but it's just one of those things. Also,
I mean, again, we have also, though, like, I mean, it's been a while since we've read that book, but also, even if like you were just like binge reading, it's been books since she was mentioned. Like, it's not. It's been a long time since she was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't want to be completely unfair is my thing.
Also, I do believe as well, maybe like after Mum and Dad came to town or something, she was like, oh, why don't you and Liz, like, you know, why don't you phone Liz? And that could have been this book though. Okay, so page 4 she's mentioned. Where's page? Oh, like in the PDF, like that's not. Can you please? Why? Oh no, that's the dedication. Okay, well that's not very helpful. She might not have even been mentioned in glass houses.
Let me see. Damn it.
Elizabeth. Okay, we're looking at Elizabeth. So he was. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, so do you ever see them because she'd been amazed how much she'd missed her friends back home, especially Elizabeth? And yeah, Elizabeth, she's my best friend. We talked all this time, you know, but when she found out I was going away to school, she just ever call her? Yeah, but it's weird. It's like we don't know each other anymore, you know. We have to think about what to say. It's weird. So she's already started to and then later on when she's talking to her mum, okay, so that happened in this book. Yeah, used to have such nice friends. What happened to Elizabeth? She went to a different school, Mum. That's no reason to not still be friends.
Yeah, but all the other okay, you know what? That's fair. That's fair. So that's on me. I forgot, but like it's been
Yeah,
a while, so.
the drifty thing was established in the first book, probably because she's like, look, she's gonna have had a friend, but we don't want to have to worry about the friend until Claire goes to MIT and Liz has transferred to another school in Cambridge. I wonder what school that could be.
No, it's fair that if she did all that, then that's fair, and then that's my bad. But like,
Are there any other, actually, aside from like Harvard and MIT, are there any other schools in that area?
In
like Boston, Cambridge.
Like in New England, there are a lot of that's where a lot of the Ivy League schools are.
No, but I'm talking specifically like Cambridge.
Oh, right.
I'm just because she was like she's going to a different school in Cambridge.
Where exactly is Cambridge? Also in Boston.
Okay, so Boston is the south side of Charles River. Cambridge is the north side of Charles River. So MIT is over in Cambridge, as is Harvard.
I mean, there are a lot of.
I mean, like they're in Boston, but like not Boston. They're in.
Yeah, like there are a lot of schools right there. Like there's MIT, Boston College, Boston University, Harvard. Tufts is right there. Suffolk. Bentley.
I think we're supposed to think. I mean, I think the only two schools in Cambridge is MIT and Harvard, though.
Yeah, but there are a lot of schools right there. Like there are a million of them. Like, God, the acceptance rate to Harvard. So low. Sorry. It's just funny. Oh, man.
It's pretty, though.
Yeah. Oh.
It's pretty.
I love that, like, Google lists the average cost after financial aid. It's like, yeah, but financial aid's hard to get.
Anyway, all we've gotten about the plot is Claire goes to MIT.
All right, so we're gonna do the same thing.
Claire goes to MIT. Shenanigans ensue. The end.
All right, we're gonna do the same thing we've been doing because again, these books are normally with book club we go point by point. These books are hard to go point by point. I'm sorry, it's hard to do it. So real quick, I'm just gonna read the synopsis of this book because it's going to summarize it better than we can. Claire thought she'd never get to leave Morganville, but she can't pass up the chance to find Nintendo Dream School at MIT. After all, okay, real quick. Let's talk about why she goes to MIT and how that happens. Let's start there.
Last book.
Because I think that's a good place to start. What?
Sorry, because I zoomed in on Google Maps, right, to Boston and whatnot. I just zoomed out, and in Rhode Island, just north of Providence, there is a place called Pawtucket, like Pawtucket, and it's just the most adorably named place I've ever heard of. Sorry, carry on. Your story. Why is Claire going to MIT?
So,
what drove her to want to leave the fine town of Morganville?
I made a list. Why am I blanking? I took Ritalin. What the hell?
Okay, well, I will tell you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My brain is like.
Michael got bamboozled by a baddie, and he didn't want to Claire. And Shane was like, "Why are you smooching on my best friend?" And she's like, "But we didn't." He goes, "But he said you did, and I don't believe you." And now Claire's like, "Grr." So her and Shane, they're still together.
But Claire is a grumpy pants about this, which is fair, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like, while seeing your best friend kiss your girlfriend would be upsetting, if
And
your girlfriend, sorry,
like one of Shane's reasons for like, I believe Michael because you didn't even try and stop him. It was like if she'd been kissing Michael on the regular prior to now, she wouldn't have been in such utter shock when Michael kissed her.
Yeah.
She probably actually would have been quicker to do the whole, the fuck you doing, dude, as opposed to like, what is happening? Because she had a very big, like, blank, what is happening moment. Like, she didn't kiss him back. She kind of just stood there like, what is happening?
Which honestly is fair, because if one of my, like, Noah's best friends, which is for whatever the fuck reason, I would be like, nah.
Yeah, you, in your head, you'd probably like freeze up for a second and be like, is this real life? Or I was about to start
no. Not again. But yeah, like it makes sense that she like froze and was like, holy shit. And also her annoyance with Shane for not trusting her also makes sense, simply because Claire has absolutely never done anything
to ever would warrant distrust.
Right. And Claire's not even like a typical YA protagonist where there's a bunch of other guys in love with her or like whatever. So there's not even like a weird pseudo triangle.
I mean, the closest thing that Claire's ever done that she's kind of hidden from Shane is was in like back in Bike Club, for example, where like Mernan's like, we need to talk secretly. So Claire didn't tell anyone. Because Mernan was like, we need to talk secretly. And
but nothing romantic.
Yeah, like, I mean, if there was something about Mernan, I could kind of, like, you know, that would be more forgivable, Shane, for buying that. Because, like, whilst the weird thing, though, is, like, with Claire and Mernan, they both see each other as their pet.
Yes. Well, and there's never been in the text any. I'm sure there's like two people.
No, Mernan is incredibly fond of Claire, but like again, as a pet.
Yes, and there's never been any indication in the text. Like I said, I'm sure there's like 3 people that ship them if you found something in the bowels of Tumblr, but there's never been any indication in the actual text itself that there's any kind of romantic feelings between them, because again, Mernan sees Claire as a pet and Claire sees Mernan as a fucked up pet. Like, you know,
they're each other's pet.
Mernan sees Claire as his adorable little Pomeranian, and Claire sees Mernan.
I wouldn't say Pomeranian. I'd say a very well-trained monkey.
Yeah, and then Claire sees Mernan as a low IQ, 3-legged chihuahua. Yeah.
But if the Chihuahua actually had the ability to like summon all the Chihuahuas on the planet and kill you if it chose to.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's in text, like, you know, and there's never any implication also, because again, we are mostly in Claire's head, albeit in third person, but we're privy to her thoughts and everything. There's also, other than like her reasonable thought, like, oh, I'm observing that Michael's attractive.
Yeah.
But also, we know that, like, it's mostly we know that Michael's attractive, but Claire doesn't feel some type of way about it, and we are completely aware of that.
I mean, all we get is, like, she gets the occasional, like, sometimes, like, Michael would give her a particularly dazzling smile, and she'll be like, oh, he's cute. Like, just occasionally she'll just have that general appreciation, just like, yeah, he's a beautiful specimen, but it's purely just appreciation. There's never actually attraction.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of on the same level as like if you're watching a movie and you're like, that actor is attractive. Or even if you know somebody in real life and you are aware that they are attractive. But it has no bearing on how you actually feel about the person, which is so it's all entirely appropriate. And again, we're privy to her thoughts. So we also know that basically Claire ships Eve and Michael, and she's, again, completely comfortable about it. We never get any indication that she's jealous of that relationship or that she even sees Michael now at this point as anything more than like a brother figure in a way.
And since book 1, he's more or less been a brother figure. In book 1 especially, he's always been he started off as like the quite stern, like overprotective big brother.
Yeah, and they have
now he's more like he's more like a twin, like where he's just like, I trust you to look after yourself.
And the nice thing about Michael too is, and Michael and Claire's relationship is really about, and this is one thing I love about Core 4s as somebody who has written 2 Core 4s. Core 4s are really fun because you wind up with such a good balance with them. Like if you do it right, because we wind up, like I said, with like a really good wholesome balance with Core 4s, just because like, you know, if you can, even if like that, like you have 2 pairings that get together or whatever, you have a lot of opportunities for each person or each pairing within that Core 4 to develop a good relationship. So like Claire and Michael's relationship, Eve and Claire's relationship, Eve and Michael's relationship, Eve and Shane's relationship. So they're all those relationships are unique. All the different combo dynamics are unique. And like, you know, all the platonic dynamics are unique. All the romance dynamics are unique. And it all feels very wholesome. And it's a good number of people that you can create like this very good foundation of characters.
And I think
I like Core 4s a lot.
Yeah. Well, also she did a really good job in, like, for example, like Eve and Shane are the 2 hotheads, whereas like Michael and Claire are they think through things and everything. So generally, like if they're pairing up to do a task or something, often Claire and Michael will team up, and even Shane will team up.
Yeah. So,
but Eve and Shane are so different to each other. Even though they're so similar, they're so different. And same with Michael and Claire. They're so similar but so different.
Yeah. Like, and something that like Addie and I did like in Blackwoods, for example, is our Claire and Aiden are very expressive, very hot-headed. Aiden more so than Claire. And like Dex now at this point has become like the wrangler, like the dad of the group. And like Naomi is kind of the emotional backbone in a lot of ways. And then in a lot of ways, Claire is kind of an emotional backbone, but in a more direct, like no bullshit kind of way. And you just can develop these really interesting dynamics. And so one thing that is still very lovely and something that just makes this series so endearing is just that Core 4 dynamic that's so easy to get attached to.
Well, because it's never weird with any of them, right? Doesn't matter who's pairing up with who for whatever thing that they're currently doing. Doesn't matter if it's the girls and the boys or the couples or the opposites.
Right.
Like it
yeah.
doesn't matter what the pairing is. Like it's never weird.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm kind of sometimes I kind of get sick of even Michael being married already at this point, though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like when the time comes in, like when Shane's leaving and stuff, like, you 2 got to go and do your married thing, and they're like, hells yes, we will do our married thing, and I'm just like, Years at 12. Eve, you can't even like if Eve had a pet. If Michael gave Eve a pet bunny, she would remember when she found its skeleton 5 years later. Like after cleaning out her closet, she'll be like, "What is this? I do not recall buying a fake bunny skeleton. Oh crap, Michael bought me a bunny." And now she's married.
Like,
am I wrong?
No, you're not.
And you would totally forget you got given a pet bunny.
I'm sorry.
Are you okay?
Oh God. No, it's the mental image of like.
Did one time you forget that you were given a pet bunny and then you found it?
No, it's the mental image of like the goth queen, like finding the bones of her forgotten pet bunny and then being honestly just like a little bit more excited about that than she was about.
But you also know that she would be a sobbing wreck like for like a week after she found it because she'd feel so bad that she forgot about the bunny.
Well, yeah, but still.
And this is like 5 years later. And it'll be like, "Michael, why didn't you remind me?" And he's like, "Well, honestly, I just assumed it escaped and you didn't want to talk about it. So it never brought it up." She's like, "But had you just mentioned the bunny, maybe Michael, I would have fed it."
Can you imagine even Michael having kids?
I think Claire and like I honestly think Claire and Shane and Eve and Michael would all have to live together, right? And Claire and Eve would have to like do collaborative parenting, like mothering. And same with Michael and Shane, because like Eve and Shane are just like, Shane would try, bless him, he would try, but he would be so bad. Like he'll try. Okay, and he'll be like number one dad in terms of like, yeah, his kid's never going to get picked on because he'll beat up anyone, right? And I'm sure he'd have like really sweet, tender moments. But then also, Claire will go out to buy, like to do some groceries and the baby will start crying and Shane's going to have a fucking freak out. So Michael's going to have to be there to help. So I feel like they're going to have to like commune parenting. They're going to have to be sister wives and brother husbands. So like I don't know. Their kids are going to have to grow up more like siblings than
like cousins, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to grow up more like siblings. Otherwise, none of the kids are going to make it out alive, okay? Otherwise.
Anyway,
you know
so
it's true.
Reasons why
Claire's going to MIT. Yeah, she needs to find herself and work out whether or not she can forgive Shane.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so somehow, I can't remember how, but somehow her and former BFF touch base, and she's like, "Oh well, I'm going to another school in Cambridge, Harvard, and you can't live in the dorms. You have to come and live with me in my townhouse thing." And Claire's like, "Okay, sure." So Claire's off to MIT and to go live with Liz, who is a whore.
Which
she goes to pick Claire up from the airport, dressed as a schoolgirl porn star.
One thing I was going to say though, real quick, is that, like Claire. We were told the whole time that we're here, you cannot leave Morganville. This no allowed.
Well, last book, though, Emily was like, "Well, you've earned the right for people to be treated fairly," and she's like, "No. I earned that right a year ago. I've earned the right to fucking leave now." And Emily's like, "Well, I guess." And that's right. I remember the book that MIT was actually calling, and she was like, "MIT is calling," and Emily's like, "What's an MIT?" And I told you to remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know if, okay, in reality, this plot hadn't been thought of yet.
No.
But I guess retconned, it'll just be like Emily just being like, "Oh, I'm so aloof. What is an MIT? Do tell."
Give me 1 second.
No worries. So I guess we'll come back to that point when she gets back, because I don't know what point she's making. But yeah, so Claire goes to go move in with Liz, but she finds out when she gets there that her and Liz have both vastly changed since they last attended high school together. Liz is a lot more presenting herself more as a promiscuous girl, for want of a better term. And she's completely oversold the house, like the apartment or flat unit, townhouse, the row house. I don't know what they're called there, but it's a townhouse.
We call them townhouses.
Townhouse? Okay, excellent. That's what we call them, and I just wasn't sure if that's what they were also called there.
Yeah, we call them townhouses.
But she's completely oversold it, though, right?
Yeah, like we don't use.
It's a great place.
Yeah, like we don't use the term like row house or anything. We just call it a townhouse.
Excellent. I know there's also brownstones, but I feel like they're a specific type of townhouse.
Yeah, so like a brownstone is like a New York specific kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's like a culturally and geographically significant and specific thing. So it's not like a term that you would use outside of New York.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was literally sitting here trying to remember what it's called in the book. But yeah, it's effectively a townhouse. And it's crap. It's crap. Claire has a tiny room that is all of the weird blue. And she's like, "Well, this fucking sucks." And then she's like, "Oh, I want to talk to Shane," but then like she doesn't. And then Shane sends her a video, and it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't.
You okay? Error 404.
It was just like, he's just talking like really awkwardly, like, "Look, this is Claire. I miss you, and if it's not Claire, stop watching because I'm about to get fucking mushy." And Claire, I'm so sorry, and I love you. And I'll wait for as long as you need me to. You're my boo-boo.
Shane from the first book.
Shane
from the first book. He would never. And it's honestly, it's a little hurty. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
yeah.
It.
Also, no mention of Miranda in this book. It's not too big an issue because we get more detail about what's going on with Miranda next book.
Yeah.
But I can just tell you, it's not really going to spoil anything. So Miranda does, like, we've established that with oh crap, what's her name?
Which who?
The chick that was the ghost hunter chick.
Jenna. Aunt Jenna.
Yes, that's right. I believe Miranda has ended up moving in with Jenna, and she just more or less just has to touch base with the glass house every so often.
Yeah.
Hello. So her not being at the house.
Sorry.
Her not being at the house was weird, but I did think it was weird though that Claire didn't even There's no mention of Claire even saying goodbye to Miranda at any point. She's like, she's your house ghost. I know she doesn't live in the house anymore, but she's your house ghost.
She's your special friend.
Like, she died saving you.
Yes.
Just
hello.
so you know.
You're a very special boy.
You can just see his paw just chopping up.
Yeah. Here.
Does he want all the pass?
There you go.
Hey. Hi, buddy.
Yes. Hello.
Oh, guess what? Guess
How
who's
can I
getting
help
uber
you?
fluffy?
Oh,
Not obviously, like
is
Archie.
Archie?
He's so fluffy. He's getting
What?
so fluffy.
What?
Oh.
What's your deal? You just want attention.
But yeah, I guess
Sorry.
Claire's homesick for Morganville. And then we go to Shane. And he's like, Michael's like, are you sure you want to do this, bro? And he's like, of course, bro, I'm gonna do this, bro. Okay, bro. Am I wrong?
No, but
It's just bro. And occasionally
funny.
a Mikey.
Oh, God,
Okay? There's occasionally a Mikey. But it's mainly just bros. And
bro. The bro mouth.
Yeah, they're just bros. It's fine.
You're not wrong. It's just funny.
Yeah, and Michael's like, okay, well, I'm gonna drive you to the bus station, bro. Okay, bro. And then they go outside, and then he's like, bro, look out, there's a dog. And then the dog bites Shane. And they're like, the dog has glowing eyes. Get it, Mikey. And then Mikey gets it. And then he's like, good job, bro. Thanks, bro. Call the cops. And then they call Hannah.
Yeah.
And Hannah's like, third hellhound this week. Oh, dear. We shall take care of it. Fare thee well, Shane. And he's like, fare thee well, Hannah. And then Shane. But Shane's
and keep in mind, he actually says fare thee well.
Just once I want a dude bro in a book to say fare thee well.
You just want to what?
A dude bro in a book to say fare thee well. Just once. It would be delightful.
It would be. It would be very delightful. Just, oh yes, fare thee well. Everybody's like, huh? Wait, what? What?
Hey, by the way, he's saying it to a police chief, former Marine, right now as well.
Yeah.
So he's like, so Michael's like, you can have my phone, bro, and I'll just get a new one because I'm a vamp. And he's like, cool, bro, thanks. And then Shane leaves town.
Yeah.
And then we go back to Claire, and she's on an orange tour at MIT, which is a fake tour that is a prank. And so then they get thoroughly pranked. And there's a scared little girl who's about 16, and she's like an early person, so she's like Claire. And Claire's like, hey, people, be friends with Viva. And they're like, okay, we'll be friends with Viva. Can we be friends with you too? And Claire's like, lol, no, bye. And Claire leaves. And then she gets a text from Michael's phone, but surprise, it's not Michael, it's Shane. And he's like, hey, sup? And she's like, sup? And he's like, I miss you, boo. And she's like, I love you. And she's like, I learned a word. And he's like, what is it? And she's like, idiot. He's like, do you know what that means? And she's like, fucking idiot. But she's all embarrassed. And he's like, lol, adorbs. And then she's like, I miss you. And he's like, I miss you too. And then it's bye. And then they bye. And then things are awkward with her and Liz. And Liz has a stalker.
Because of course she does.
Of course she does. He followed her from Texas, and she's like, he just won't leave me alone. And she's like, call the police. And she's like, oh, he tried, but he hasn't actually done anything that they can arrest him for yet. And I'm pretty sure you could still get a restraining order. At this point, he's followed you from Texas. and he's literally just chilling outside your house all day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at this point you can get a restraining order.
Yeah.
Like, he can't have charges pressed against him, but he can be restrained. Because that's stalking.
Yes, but they don't.
Actually,
they don't,
maybe he could have charges, because stalking is a crime, even in Boston. The only reason I say it like that is because she's there in Boston. But she's like, we can't do anything. And Claire's like, well, I'm going to show you how to knife fight. And then we fade to black. And then it's the next day, and Claire misses Shane, and she goes to go and meet her professor person, because, surprise, Emily has someone from Morganville, one of Mernon's former lab techs, working at MIT, taking Mernon's crazy brain experiments and turning them into, like, science. And so Claire's there to help turn alchemy into science. And she's like, by the way, I made a Vlad. And I remember what it stands for now, because I paid attention. Vampire leveling adjustment device. So Vlad is back. And she's like, I made a Vlad. And she's like, what's a Vlad? And she's like, well, this is a Vlad. And she's like, makes vampires go from, she's like, eh. And she's like, well, get that. And she's like, well, it's getting delivered. She's like, well, go home and wait. So Claire goes home and waits.
Yeah.
And then it comes. And then she's like, I'm going to send some peeps to come and do a thing. And so she does. And Jesse and Pete show up. Have you worked out who Jesse is? Jesse's another historical figure.
I have not.
Okay. So, do you remember Bloody Mary? Mary
Yes.
the First, Queen of England?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. Because the king that was king before Bloody Mary was, I believe, her half-brother, Edward the Seventh. And he was Protestant.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on the relationship, but he was Protestant. Mary was devout Catholic. And he's like, well, she can't be the next queen, even though she's next. So he wrote a thing saying, my cousin, Lady Jane Grey, Lady Jane Dudley, or whatever the fucking name was at that point, shall become next queen. She is my heir. So then he dies, and she becomes next queen, and Mary ain't pleased, and she has her charged with treason and beheaded after 9 days. So she was queen for 9 days, and then Bloody Mary became queen. Didn't end well for anyone, because, you know, she killed the heretics. And then she was gone, and then Queen Elizabeth I, and she was like, okay, no more Catholic bullshit. Let's go back to Anglican. And that's how it went. Jessie is Lady Jane Grey.
Okay.
So she was Queen of England for 9 days.
Okay.
And it's alluded to in this, well, it's actually just said Emily saved her. I'm pretty sure it's in one of the short stories. Effectively, Emily found someone who looked close enough like her and was like, hey, look, you're going to die, but your family's going to get paid handsomely. Do you agree to impersonate Lady Grey? And she was like, yes. So, like, she paid someone's family and rescued her. And now she's Jessie, a biker goth vamp chick living in Boston. Yeah. So, yeah, Jessie and Pete, who is human, rock up to take Vlad and then take Claire back to thingy. And then we have to Shane.
Vlad is not a person. It is an object.
Vlad is a ray gun that makes vampires scared.
Yeah.
Well, Vlad's not yet that, but he will be. And we cut back to Shane. Shane's working at a bar with Chef Yes Chef. And lo and behold, Jessie is bartender there and Pete is bouncer. And he's like, wow, Jessie seems like a vampy vamp. So then he follows Jessie And he's like, why is Jesse going to Claire's house? And then, oh, no, Claire, don't get in Jesse's car. Oh, no, Claire's getting in Jesse's car, better stalk. And then follows her to school.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, well, I guess I better go back to work. So he does. At this point as well, stalker guy tried to break into the house, and he was like, no, and called the cops. Claire gets home. She's like, cops were here. What the fuck? And then people break into her house. And one thing that still doesn't make sense to me is, while she was still at the lab, like a bunch of suits rocked up, and she was like, hide Vlad, so she hid Vlad. We later find out that they're daylighters, right?
Yeah.
Why did they break into her house to look for Vlad when she'd already taken Vlad to the place?
Because
they would have known.
That's a good question, actually. I don't know. Tension?
I imagine. Maybe they didn't get the memo yet.
Tension? These books are kind of silly. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look, you know what? A lot happens in these books that either doesn't make the most sense.
She forgot about.
Or it quickly becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, it's like she forgot that she put that part in and forgets to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Oh, like
because I forgot that happened, because I don't know that actually comes back and gets wrapped up. I'm trying to think.
No. Also, because then one of the guys that she introduced, like the other chick to Nick, he makes multiple more appearances, and generally in a lot of books, you don't meet a character unless they're going to be a thing for some reason, unless it's Morganville.
Yeah.
Which I guess I kind of don't mind, because Morgan, it was annoying in House of Night, right? Because I just felt like they were just introducing characters so these characters could do one thing for the plot instead of just getting someone who already exists to do it. Whereas
that was a big problem in House of Night. Like,
whereas
they kept tacking on characters. It was a whole thing.
Because Morganville is so fluffy, and a lot of the plot just centers, a lot of the scenes just center around them just hanging out or doing stuff. It kind of doesn't. It's not as infuriating when she introduces characters that end up doing and being nothing, because that's life. You meet people for all of 2-3 weeks, and you kind of become casual acquaintances, and then life drifts apart. So, as much as normal life this series could be, considering all the vamp stuff and everything, it kind of seems like she's tried to make this series as just real lifey as possible.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna feed him.
Okay, no worries.
And see if that placates him.
So I can't remember the exact order of everything over the next bit, but more or less she works with her professor, lady person, at MIT with Vlad. Okay, so yeah. And she eventually brings Jesse in to see how it works on Jesse. And on Shane's end, actually, no, I don't think we're at that yet. No, so Claire, when a bunch of suits rock up at the lab, Claire's like, should I let anyone, Irene, her professor lady, was like, you should go now, Claire. And she's like, do I need to tell anyone where you are? And she's like, oh, yes, do let Dr. Flory know. And Dr. Flory is the name of the bar that Jesse works at, so she just assumed there. So she rocks up there, thinks she sees Shane. She actually does see Shane, but he's like, fuck, and hides. And Jesse meets Claire outside, and she's like, what's going on? And she's like, well, people rocked up. And Jesse's like, okay, thank you, no worries. Cheerio. And yeah, bye. At one point, Liz brings... I honestly I can't remember the order of everything. So I'm just kind of like, Liz brings a creepy professor home. And he keeps on trying to like
she's
talk to
doing a
Claire
lot of
about
that.
stuff. Yeah. He tries to talk to Claire about some stuff, and Claire's just like, this guy's creepy, like creepy AF. And then she gets to listen to them have sex for a while. Like, she doesn't want to, but like
But like she gets to.
Yeah. So then she ends up talking to Shane. Oh, also this conversation with her and Shane, while like Liz and Professor Dirty are like doing biz, and he's just like, no, Claire, listen to me. Focus on the sound of my voice. But then he doesn't talk. He just breathes for a minute. And Claire's just like, oh, that's some good breathing. And then they chat. And I'm just like, what is this conversation?
It's some HQ breathing, bae. It is some smexy breathing. Tell you what.
But he's just like, listen. He's like, just listen to the sound of my voice, and then he just proceeds to breathe. And I'm like, why are we breathing when you are supposed to be talking?
I don't know. You know what? I don't know.
The Shane was just really corny and cheesy in this book in a lot of ways.
It was honestly, it was really uncomfy. Like,
I'm pretty sure like they're a bit less next book. Because like they're actually back together next book and everything's fine next book. So a lot of this book is like, is it okay if I tell you I love you, even though I've already been telling you I love you every single time we talk? Yes, it's okay, Shane. Okay, I just want to make sure it's okay. Because, you know, if you're not comfortable with me saying I love you, Shane, I love you. Okay, I love you too. Is that okay? Fuck off. Just say it.
It's so weird. Like,
and then like they make out, right? Like they hardcore make out like whenever they do a thing. But then they're like, okay, now we need to yeet. And then they yeet. And then Shane's like, is it okay if I kiss you? You know, because I know things are weird between us. I'm like, you were making out not 10 minutes ago. You're making out not 10 minutes ago. And
it's
then,
so awkward.
And then when she introduces like their relationship to Pete, she's like, oh yeah, I'm his fiance. And then later on at the end of the book, he's like, do you still want to marry me one day? I'm like, we already had this conversation. She was like, I'm your fiance, bitch. And he was like, will you be my fiance? And yes. Can we just go back to being dude bros with Michael, please? Because we don't get to have a lot of bro time with Michael after, like, later on in the book.
I apologize. My dog is being a brat.
He's a baby. Leave him alone. Well, you're trying to. I understand, and he's not letting you. I get it. Yeah, like, but anyway. Next day, surprise, surprise, Professor McCreepy did a creepy creep. And Liz is like sobbing, and my life is over. And Claire's like, okay, bye. And so she buys. I can't remember what she does. I think she goes to go do a thing, but she gets told no, like, you got a free day today. And she's like, okay. So then she just goes and checks everything out and does a thing. And then she goes home, and her and Liz do. Oh, also, there was this whole thing like when she first gets back with Liz, and Liz is like, I don't like TV shows or movies or books or anything like that. Blah, rah, rah. And then later on, she's like, Claire, why don't you ever want to watch movies with me? Did you pick up on that at all?
I did.
Yeah. But anyway, so she gets back, and Liz is still crying, and Claire's like, okay, I guess we'll do friend stuff. And she's like, I want pizza. So Claire's like, okay, I'll go get pizza. Claire goes get pizza, and she runs into Dr. Creepy Creep, or Professor McCreepy Creep, whatever. And he's like with another chick, and she's like, oh, what's his name?
The professor?
Yeah. David.
Yeah.
I was like, David, how could you? And then he's like, Claire, what? And she's like, I ran into your wife and she told me she's not leaving you. What are we gonna do about the twins, David? The twins. You will be a good father to them. So help me. And she storms off. And she ruined his date effectively. And then she gets home and the house has been broken into.
Yeah.
And she calls Jesse and she's like, and Jesse's like, wait for me. And Jesse gets there and there's blood and stuff and it's like, and then she's like, we need to call the police. And then Shane rocks up and he's like, no, we can't call the police. And she's like, Shane? And he's like, hi, Claire. I know. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, but I'm here and I have information for you. And she's like, okay, we'll talk about this later. And he's like, okay. So Shane witnessed an abduction from the Men in Black. And he's like, look, they took Liz and then Stalker guy tried to stop him and they took him too. They're like, well, shit. And then Jesse's like, well, I've got to go do some investigating. And he's like, okay. So Jesse goes to investigate. Oh, by the way, Michael and Eve are on their way because Mernon went missing, and I think Mernon's on their way there. And Oliver was exiled last book.
Yeah.
So that's happening. And so Shane and Claire, she's like, what are you doing here? He's like, look, I just needed to be near you. And she's like, well, that's weird. And he's like, I know, but I just had to be near you. And she's like, okay, well, I miss you. And he's like, I miss you too. And she's like, make out. And he's like, sure. So then they make out for a minute. And then they go back to where he's staying, but the cops are there and they're like, So then they go to Pete's place because Pete's like, take my place. And then they have sex on Pete's bed. And then Pete comes home and he's like, did you really have to? And they're like, look, we did laundry, okay? He's like, that's cool. So you two are together, and Claire's like, we're engaged. And Shane's like, excuse you, we're engaged? And she's like, well, you told me you wanted to marry me one day. And he's like, yeah, I guess we're engaged. When? Oh, very, very soon. We're getting married very, very soon. And I'm like thinking, you didn't even know if you wanted to be with him 10 minutes ago. And now we're getting married very, very soon. Okay.
What?
And then Jesse rocks up with Mernon, Oliver, Eve, and Michael. But Michael's got a stake in his chest, but it's not a happy stake. It's a very, very bad stake. It's a very, very bad stake that has is filled with liquid silver. So they have to do a weird thing to get it out. They do. And then they get a call from Liz, and she's like, I'm in the tunnels. So then they go to the tunnels. And they rescue her. Stalker guy's dead. There's a weird bat, creepy humanoid thing. They're like, and then Jesse gets kidnapped and they all yeet. And Vlad has been super duper upgraded and sends Michael crazy, and then they yeet. And they're like, we gotta go rescue Jesse. So then they go to rescue Jesse. But it doesn't work out well. Bum, bum, bum. Professor Irene has betrayed them. She's working with the Daylight Foundation. Claire is like, well, fuck. Shit's not good. I guess we're just going to have to go along until we work out a way out of it. So then she does that. They all get captured. They go to a farm. They outmaneuver them and win and take them over. Most of the Daylighters die. Irene gets captured. They yeet back to Morganville. They compel Liz to think she was kidnapped by sex traffickers and escaped. Pete, they were like, look, you know what's what. We're just going to be like, you went home and got drunk and passed out. So, because, there was a whole bunch of dead people. So, let's just give you no memory of it.
Yeah.
And they yeet back to Morganville. And then when they get there, Hannah meets them at the border, and she separates the vampires from the humans, and then the vampires all get staked. And end book.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah, that's the book. It's so hard to describe that plot. Like,
that was one of the easier plots as well.
it was, but like, you know, because like the first book is like Claire goes to school and then there are vampires. This the door is open. You can what the hell? Yeah, like because like the first book is, you know, Claire goes to school, then there are vampires.
What the hell?
And that there are vampires, and that's the plot. And this the second book is like, and also there are vampires. I don't know.
Just when you thought you'd met enough vampires, there are more.
I think we got so used to Mercy, like, because Mercy is, you know, it's got
so
like
many. Its subplots have subplots. but it's very linear. Mercy plots are very linear. There's very little wasted time. Half these books are wasted time. These books are good, like, if you need something to just, like, keep your mind slightly busy while you vacuum the floor. Like, They're enjoyable, but they're not amazing literature. Like,
ow.
That said, though, I feel like a prerequisite of compelling literature is a lack of bros. As soon as bro is introduced to the dialogue of the book, it is immediately excluded
from the category of literature. No, I don't really disagree with that. That's not a trash take. I can agree with that.
I will say though, this is the very first book in the series with no Monica Morell.
That's true.
This marks the first book that does not have a Monica in it, or an Emily, I believe. No, Emily. I don't think Emily was in Kiss of Death. Maybe she was. This may be the first, maybe the second book with no Emily.
Yeah, one of the two.
But yeah, first book with no Monica.
Yeah. Anyway,
because even Monica was in Kiss of Death for like literally 10 seconds.
We'll probably finish this up next, but I need to go because I need to deal with him. Because I think he needs to go out. But yeah, so that is this book, and we will finish up the series. We will finish up the series next time. So yeah.